Okay, guys, here we are. Welcome back. With me, I have a member of Team Episod Studio, and this is actually the last but definitely not least interview of ProtoPlay Live this year. We do have an event coming up tomorrow as well, so please have your eyes and ears peeled. Check out our Twitter to hear more, and do remember to vote for teams. Okay, but without further ado, let's jump into it. Would you like to introduce yourself, your team, and briefly about your game as well?
Hi everyone, I am Cindy. I am from Episod Studio and we are working on Race for the Arctic. Our team, we met at the Royal College of Art where we didn't really study game design, but we come from an art and design background.
Mhm.
And we started Games Club there because we love making games and we think games are the best medium for storytelling. And Race for the Arctic tells the true story of what is predicted to happen in the Arctic
Mhm.
and how countries like Russia, China, and Canada are waiting to benefit from global warming.
I see. I see. Interesting, interesting. Uh, okay, so how did this idea come to be? Was that based on something that maybe you are worried about that might happen and the impact it might have, and you want to spread this knowledge? Or did you actually think, oh, it will make for a cool game? How did the idea come about?
So the idea came when we started Games Club and we really wanted to make a game that was going to be impactful and tell a very strong story.
Mhm.
And I remember one of the people in the team showed me this article that talked about what I just said about the countries and what
Mhm.
is the real war that is happening in the Arctic. And we had this conversation in the team on how when we think of global warming, we only think about melting ice and polar bears losing their homes, but we don't really talk about this other narrative. And
Mhm.
we thought that we really need to talk about this and people really need to know about what's happening there. And yeah, we think that the best way to tell it is through making a game and putting the player at the center of action,
Mhm.
so they find out themselves what is going on.
Yeah, definitely. I do feel like the games can certainly make that impact. So let's actually swap to the gameplay. If you can talk us through what the game is about and what the player, what they are gonna experience if they jump into this game.
So when the players jump into the game, they're going to take the role of the Freight family, which is a fictional character, a fictional family that we have created.
Mhm.
Their goal is to make the family profitable. This is a shipping company family, and they're going to race into 3 laps, and these 3 laps are going to be led by 3 generations of the family and take the game 25 years into the future. So we're going to reach 2075 through the game.
I see.
And the main gameplay is basically the player is sailing the cargo ship
Mhm.
across the Arctic, and they lose money and they win money based on how well they're playing. They also control what kind of cargo they transport. And throughout playing, they're going to find out about different bits of the narrative as the characters reflect about their journey in their logbook.
I see. Awesome, awesome. So the game, would you say it's more? How much can we expect of storytelling through gameplay, and how much of it is actually gonna be through things like we are seeing now, where it's where the player is getting a bit of some text, kind of telling them what's going on. Where was the focus put when you were designing the game?
So we are trying to merge them together. So we really want Race for the Arctic to be equally a game
Hmm.
that player can experience and play, but also kind of a documentary that they find out about the story.
Hmm.
The whole story will come through the perspective of our character, so it's never going to be given to the players as facts.
Right.
And there's going to be parts where the player is allowed to just play freely and just sail across and decide on the cargo,
Oh, I
and that's
see.
the company. But then the voice reflection kind of carries the game forward at all times in a way.
Hmm.
And also the player is allowed to choose whether they want to go deeper into bits of narrative with the binoculars that you will see also in the gameplay.
Okay, we'll hopefully see that soon. What's the story behind the how the game is styled, the art direction?
So with the style of the game, we really wanted to make something clean and low poly. So
Hmm.
we give a lot of importance to the story in a way, but when we were in Transfuser, we started thinking about how do we create something that is a bit special and different, but also that saves us time in production. And our art director Juliette, she came up with the idea of creating, especially the binoculars, like
Hmm.
dioramas. So for us, that fits very well thematically because it makes the game feel like you're in a natural history museum, but also
Yeah.
it's easy for us, for the 3D team, because we don't have to animate everything, and we are trying to create something that is more. I don't know if the right word is unique for the game, but that is kind of like the direction we want to take.
Hmm. Hmm. Can the player, do they have a destined route where they actually are going to be traveling, or because as I'm watching the gameplay, as I'm seeing it now, what came to my mind, can I actually turn right? Can I attempt to maybe break through that ice, or is that gonna stop me?
Yeah, so currently if you try to break through the ice, because now we're following the icebreaker,
Yeah,
and uh, keep in mind that this is all based in reality, so we want to make
yeah,
it feel
yeah.
as possible.
Hmm.
So right now we can only follow the path of the icebreaker,
Hmm.
and if player tries to go, and you will see it, or maybe you've already seen it a little bit earlier, that when you try to go through the ice, you get feedback that you're losing money because the ship needs repairing,
Oh,
and that's
okay.
right to play. But then, because right now in this time, because of the ice, there is only one route that you can follow around the Arctic, and maybe in different bits, not in the prototype, but in the full game, it's going
Hmm.
to be that you can take in some bits of the map where there's not a lot of ice, you can
Hmm.
take different. But later on, as we go into the future, there's going to be different shipping routes, and the player will be allowed to choose what route they go, and this affects the narrative. This will affect the fines that they have to pay,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything. Yeah, for the gameplay.
I see. Awesome, awesome, awesome. What would you say you are the happiest with how you managed to make the game? I must say you managed to actually create a really clean project. Like you said, you did mention the low poly, aiming to make it quite clean in visual style. But personally, like from the development, what was the proudest thing you got to work on?
So I would say the proudest thing for me is the fact that we managed to build a prototype for Race for the Arctic. And
Hmm.
this is for two reasons. The first reason is because we've been talking about this game for almost 2 years,
Oh wow.
and since we started Games Club, and we always kind of developed it very theoretically, but we
Hmm.
never had the chance to come together and build a prototype. So it was great for me to see us work together to build it, and especially since, as I mentioned, we this is our first game, the first game we ever make. We have
Yeah,
never made, we have made one small game, but this was our first attempt at properly going through game design.
yeah.
And I think we learned a lot, and also the game developed a lot, and it taught us that the more we produce, like, we allowed the game to tell us what the game wanted to be.
Hmm.
So many of mechanics, like the money mechanic that we developed, it just happened on its own because it felt natural. Or even the subtitles that we placed in the world, we always thought they were just going to be at the bottom, like in a
Hmm.
field. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm very proud of the team for building our first ever prototype.
Absolutely, congratulations for putting it together.
Thank
Especially like whenever meetings and that it has to happen remotely. And about the text, I actually, yeah, it's really nicely placed, and it does play around of the idea of following the icebreaker and that you are being told a story as you're sort of traveling through, which is pretty cool. Is there anything you would change if you had the opportunity now? Like something you would maybe expand on or iterate on in the project as it is currently?
Yes, definitely. So many things, but
Okay.
main yeah, there's always many things that we would love to
Yeah.
change. But the main thing is that, so since this is a very story driven documentary game, we focused a lot on how we tell the story.
Hmm.
So we focused a lot on what is the main character, how do they reflect on in the world, how do we tell the story. So for example, even with Sedna, with the last thing that you will see in the end, we have reached out to communities to create this story with them. So we are being very, very careful with how we tell this story.
Hmm.
This kind of stopped us from focusing a lot in the game mechanics. So in like the money mechanic came a bit late in the production to us
Okay.
because we focused a lot in the story. So now we have decided that we're going to spend 1 month when the team forgets about the story completely, forgets about the art, but we just test the mechanic, test the gameplay, and focus solely on the gameplay and making it a more exciting experience.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you already touched on it, how the development kind of evolved with the money being added as
Yeah.
essentially part of the game system, pretty much. Were there many more things that sort of evolved throughout your enterprise pathway journey?
The main thing was the money mechanic that
Hmm.
we developed maybe theoretically at this stage, and now we really want to push forward.
Hmm.
And then the art as well. That kind of like we talked about how sometimes when you set limits, like for example, we had time limit, we had production limits because we didn't have an animator,
Hmm.
and we understood that sometimes limits make you think more creatively. And for
Yeah.
us, this is what helped us think in terms of okay, we don't have an animator in the team. We have limited skills, we have limited time, and we started looking at dioramas.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, that was like the art and the mechanics, and obviously yes, the I think also working together, because before we were students and we have collaborated together on some commissions,
Hmm.
but this was the first time that we had to properly follow a production plan. We learned quite early, like in beginning of July, that we had to do stand-ups because there was lack of communication between teams and
Hmm.
things being delayed. So we started doing morning stand-ups every morning, and then towards the end of the deadline, it was twice a day. So at least for me, it taught me how what works with the team and what doesn't. So now we know when we move forward,
Hmm.
we know how the process is more efficient.
I see. Awesome. I mean, it sounds like you guys grown a lot, which is really amazing to hear. What do you think is like the biggest skill you gained from all of this?
Uh, So there are skills for project management and on one hand. So I think the whole team, I could see all the individuals started to have agency on what they were doing. So in the beginning, it was like I was making the production plan, but then later on, I saw them taking on and kind of managing other people as well. So this was the main thing that I took.
Hmm.
But also on game design, on especially the art team, they learned a lot.
Hmm.
The binoculars, for example, they are created by the art team more than the developer, and then the
I see.
developer had to create some UI
Hmm.
himself as well. And from me and the writer, we had to read one book in 3 days on
Oh,
how
wow.
to build the story. And the other part is also the community,
Hmm.
and how to grow the community. So we had to write devlogs every week to kind of get our game out there.
Hmm.
And what we learned from that is that building a community is very difficult.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
we're
Ma-
going to focus on that as
Maybe
well.
maybe you got an advice for the viewers how, if you were to give yourself an advice prior to going through the experience, what would you say is the best advice to help build a community?
I I really don't know 'cause I
It's a
don't
tough
know what
question.
is.
There is no secret to it, I guess.
Yeah, I think from what we have seen and what works
Hmm.
is gifts. We've seen that people love gifs and
Hmm.
images that move.
Yeah.
So posting a lot of art and also behind the scenes.
Hmm.
Actually, the truth is that our one of the most successful posts was
Hmm.
when we talked about the team and who we were and we put our faces forward.
Hmm.
And we saw a lot of interaction with that post,
Hmm.
and that kind of made it feel like the community wants to know who is behind the game,
Yeah.
and have like make it a bit more personal, as if we're connecting with them.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
I think that's actually a great point. I think I mentioned earlier on during the stream today, but I think staying in touch with your consumer as a producer, as a creator, can really be beneficial. Like when you care about the project, it can really be a nice boost of morale, I think, to the team and to you as a developer. So I certainly agree with that. And the gifts, of course, that's a really good tip, I would say. I speak from experience when there is a whenever there is a game post, even if you're scrolling through if you see a GIF for 3 seconds, it's more likely to stick in your mind rather than if it was just an image, right? So I think that's a really really good point. Have you figured out, speaking of audience, have you figured out a target audience? Do you think it's for anyone, or do you think you have an idea who's actually gonna play this game?
We have an idea of who we think is going to be more attracted to our
Mhm.
game, and obviously, the more we engage with the audience, the more we will see whether this is the right
Yeah.
audience for us or not.
Mhm.
But right now, we assume that the audience that is going to be more interested is older generation Z and young millennials,
Mhm.
and that is because of the theme of the game, which is about global warming, and this is the audience that is more politically and socially involved
Mhm.
in the topic of climate change.
Mhm.
And from our very, very extremely limited data about our very small audience,
Right.
we've actually seen that they are the people that follow us
Mhm.
and like our posts. So we assume that yeah, this is our audience.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I think it's great that you're actually, even at such a early stage as a studio, engaging with community and actually seeing what is actually happening. So there is not like wishful target audience. There is an actual. It's based on facts and like who is actually engaging with your posts, which I think, I think it's a great approach. I'm actually gonna jump back into the gameplay here. I would like to ask about players' ability to swap the cargo. We've seen the binoculars, which was really cool. And then just before we jump back into our interview scene, we did see the player just docking their ship. So how does the swapping out cargo, how does that procedure work? Are there maybe different ships player can control? And are those jellyfish that we are seeing on screen? Quite a few questions for you. There we go.
Yeah. So if you see the jellyfish, then it means you're in the Sedna scene, which is
Mhm.
a dark scene, and our team's most favorite scene, by the way.
Okay,
So backtrack a little bit on the cargo. So that is a very, very work in progress mechanic that
I see.
we have put there concept and we are going to develop. But if you notice, basically on what cargo you choose, it also affects what the player with what the character says as well
Mhm.
in the story. So we are also thinking about how these choices affect the narrative as well. So in the cargo right now, we assume that this is going to be a bit more developed than just choosing the cargo. Maybe you'll
Mhm.
choose what fines to pay, what kind of taxes to pay as well, based on all, and all has to be done on research. And also, the more that we progress into the future, the type of cargo is going to change as well.
Mhm.
So it's going to be tourism stuff or technology
Oh,
stuff.
I see. Okay.
And then when on how this affects the narrative, we kind of have understood that it's not like it's a game that it has different endings because of what we choose, but it's going to have a small impact on the player. Just so for example, there we say the character says I chose the cargo with animal pelts or the technology cargo. It's still under development and we really want to push it forward. On how, and especially how it affects the story as well.
Mhm.
And in the second, I don't know if this answered or if you have another question for the mechanic.
Well, I have questions for days. For example, can I go to the far left or far right? Because I'm not seeing any ice right now. What would
In
happen?
the
Would the players still be losing money if they go left or right?
in the jellyfish scene, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, in the final scene. So that is our most story-driven scene, and the
Mhm.
one that we need to go back and find out. Yeah, because many players will try to go on the other side. We want
Yeah.
them to follow. And one way is that we're going to make the jellyfish light up gradually so you know that you need to follow it, and obviously if you're going to go you're going to start losing money or you're going to get the feedback, but that scene is the most story. That scene is supposed to feel like a dream. It's not a
Mhm.
real scene. It's
I
not really
see.
happening.
I see.
It's the story of Sedna, the goddess of the underworld, and we are building this story with the communities, the Inuit communities in Alaska. So we have approached one woman that she's involved in the university there and is going to help us.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's about the scene is mainly about telling that story, and it's a dream-like scene rather than a real gameplay scene. And this is something that, if you see in our prototype, we've tried to look at different kind of narratives and different so we go from ice, like following the icebreaker and sailing, then we have looked at the binocular, we've looked at the money mechanic, and in the end on a very story-driven scene to kind of find out how do we make this very whole experience, not only from the narrative perspective but also from the gameplay.
Yeah.
And all of them have a lot of gaps that now we can go back and develop them further and make them work. Because we've been thinking for this scene in particular, in the beginning this was going to be a cinematic scene that you don't control the ship at all, like the screen comes smaller and you just see the story. But we felt that it's better for the player to still be in control.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
yeah, obviously it's the point of there's going to be players that will want to go on the left or on the right. How do we kind of prevent that, or how not just not prevent, but like how do we make the player want to go back?
Yeah, yeah. I was about. Yeah, I think that's a really healthy way to think about it. I was about to say that as well. Just encourage them back onto the path, right?
Yeah. Right now they are forced back into the path. I have to be honest.
Maybe the ship
But
could sink as it goes off the path. Maybe the jellyfish help it stay afloat.
that is a very interesting idea.
There you go. You can add it in. Just add me in the credits. It's okay.
Yeah.
I am loving though this sort of like almost like murals that do appear on the icebergs. That is something I really like. Haven't seen much of that in not a dream version, right? It was just the text, but the fact that the storytelling is taking this sort of route is really cool. It's quite nice to see. I also loved the interaction with the iceberg itself. When boat went actually into it, there were a few afloat, and it started like wobbling. It gives the ship weight. It shows that you are in the world and it's not just a story. You are controlling this big ship.
Yeah.
So kudos to that. That was really cool to see.
Thank you very much. We love this scene. When we finished, because they keep in mind this was every scene was a sprint. We were all working together, and then by the end we would all see the scene come together. It was kind of a surprise for all of us, especially this scene. And when we saw it, we were all talking on how we love this scene. We are gonna push it forward because obviously it has a lot of problems. But I'm very proud of the icebergs because it was my idea, so I'm very proud of it. On
Nice.
how basically the idea of because Sedna is the goddess of the underworld, and in the beginning the idea was that we were going to sail and Sedna comes up and we see the story. We're thinking maybe the story is in the sky, maybe it's just again just voice. But then since she's in the underworld, we thought about how icebergs are just, we see a fourth of them and 3/4 is under it, and it hides a lot. So it felt like the world is hiding this story, and it's the icebergs have this story and it's like a secret, and it comes out and it tells you this story, and then later on it would go back into the world. And yeah, we wanted it to feel, and if you see like the hand of Sedna comes up and you see the fingers being cut, and we will see Sedna as well.
Yeah,
But
there was a humongous head in the scene. I was, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we want to give life to the world as well. So
Yeah.
it's not just the stories being there written and we are just going through it. We want to see how the world is talking to the player as well.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that I do like, personally, I don't think I engage with too many games that are focused on being too slow and just story driven. And I wasn't expecting this much lore or this depth of lore from this game, so I got pleasantly surprised. I think that arc with the jellyfish, it took an interesting turn because it went from delivering cargo and like sort of this environment thing to this like mystery, and it's all in the same game, and it does make it quite interesting. And then seeing the interaction of the boat with things, that was really cool. I was so happy to see that. That was great.
Thank you.
Absolutely, it's cool. I'll make sure to, or anyone in the chat just now, if you would like to type !episode studio, you'll be able to get all the links you may require to check out the game further. So the game further, what's the plan now after your journey on the enterprise pathway? What are you looking to do as a studio?
So we are we're gonna still work on the game. We are
Mm-hmm.
really excited to make this game happen in whatever way possible.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're looking for funding, for a publisher. We want to develop more the mechanics and the story. We are pitching in November in a very big documentary festival that is also looking at game-like experiences. So it's going to be a
Okay.
different environment for us there.
Mm-hmm.
And also for the game itself, we need to develop the money mechanic, but
Mm-hmm.
also we are going to tap into Russia and develop one scene to see how. Because right now, as you were saying, we have tried to look at different. So you go from sailing the cargo to
Mm-hmm.
choosing the cargo to looking at binoculars to this mystical, dreamlike
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
We also want to look at politics and how we can tell that story as well.
Okay.
So, and then also we want to look into, because this is all in lap one in 2023, August 2023.
Mm-hmm.
That's when the game is happening. But we want to look into 2050 and 2075 and
Oh well.
see how
Okay.
we tell those stories and how we bring that research into the game.
Okay. Okay. So what are you looking to? What's the dream goal for the game? Where would you like to see it?
Can I talk about the big dream or realistic dream? Or
Oh
both?
no, the big dream. Of course, the big
The
dream.
big dream.
Yeah, of course,
So
always go for the big dream. Yep.
the big dream
Yeah.
is to see the game on Netflix.
Huge. Yeah.
It's the big dream. The more attainable dream is to see it on Steam being played by many, many players
Mm-hmm.
and opening up the discussion about what is happening in the Arctic
Mm-hmm.
and, yeah, having some really, really interesting discussions from there.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I'm sure, guys, you can obtain it. And I mean both. I mean both. I personally feel like there is no goal really out of reach. It just takes time and work. So, to me, both goals were obtainable. So I hope you'll get to see it that way as well. Yeah, I'll get your socials. Do you know when we can expect like further development of the game, further updates?
We are always going to post on our itch.io with our devlogs, but we think we're going to start developing the game from end of October
Okay.
when we get back into the game mechanics, and then Russia scene should come in November.
Okay, there we go. Awesome. There is some dates. Thank you so much. We're gonna be finishing up. Would you like to say any few more words? Any final tips to game devs? Any shout outs? Stage is yours for a minute.
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to say for the people that are watching this and those that are not part of Transfuser that applying for Transfuser was one of the best decisions we took as a team. And because especially it gave us the biggest teaching, which is don't think about making the game, but make it.
Yeah.
Because you learn a lot by making rather than just thinking, and allow the game to tell you what the game wants to be rather than imposing what you always thought the game was going to be. And sometimes limits can make you more creative than you thought.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, definitely. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cindy. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I look forward to the game's development. I wish you guys best of luck. We're gonna go into a short intermission, and after we are gonna we'll say goodbyes to ProtoPlay Live 2020. So I'll be with you guys very, very shortly.